This is the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast, hosted by David Charlton, and you're listening to this podcast to help you build your own mental toughness, or so that you can support other people or your clients better. Either way, you will learn more about developing this plastic personality trait that all but guarantees that you will perform better and lead a more prosperous life. Hi, and welcome back to the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with your host, David Charlton. So today, I'm feeling refreshed and pretty good after a week away. I've been in sunny Scarborough in North Yorkshire, and yes, you might not be surprised, I did spend quite a bit of time in the North Sea. Why? Well, because I think I'm 60 days now into deliberate cold exposure, where generally I've been in a cold tub, an ice bath. But yeah, we've had some fun as well along the way, in the sea and in different places. Now, when I think about jumping in the sea, it would have filled me with fear, certainly before doing this challenge, especially the fact that the North Sea is pretty cold. And it is relevant to this episode. So fear is something that I come across on a regular basis when I work with goalkeepers. I've supported a number of goalkeepers from the budding youngster up to the top professional goalkeeper over the last few years. And I've got a particular interest in this position. And fear, it's a word that really does strike me with goalkeepers because, let's be honest, arguably it is the hardest position on the football pitch. And fear of making a mistake, fear of getting physically hurt by a big strapping centre forward or strapping centre half, that can affect people in various different ways. So today I was fortunate enough to speak with a very knowledgeable goalkeeping expert, if you like. So Andy Elleray is a goalkeeping coach and an educator. He's got a number of books out there on the technical, the tactical, physical and psychological elements to goalkeeping. So he's a fountain of knowledge, and we went on to chat about fear and other psychological challenges that goalkeepers come up against. I was really thankful to spend the time with Andy and pick his brains. I hope that you go on to really enjoy this episode, certainly as much as I did recording it. Hi, Andy. It's great to have you on the podcast today. Would you be able to share with the listeners a little bit about your background and your interest in goalkeeping to start with?
Yeah, sure do. Yeah, massive thanks for the invitation. Really looking forward to talking with you today. I've been involved in goalkeeping ever since I was probably 5-6 years old when I started playing in the playground, and it's kind of like just taken over my life over the best part of 30 years. Like many young kids dream of playing for England and playing professional when you're younger. I was always pretty good, but I was never kind of at that professional level, always just below, like saying professional, high amateur level. And I've always been interested in sport and not just goalkeeping as well. So when growing up, obviously looking at what I wanted to do for a career, and I wanted to go into sports coaching and studied that at A-level, university, obviously playing in goal at the same time, and throughout my studies doing lots of research on goalkeeping, looking at how I can apply all the coaching methodology you learn on courses to kind of goalkeeping really, and like making that kind of a niche within a coaching environment. And that was probably about 15 years ago. I'm 35 now, so studying when sports coaching, the sports science industry was really kind of taking off around university. So my background's kind of from a good playing, coaching and like an academic point of view, so kind of three-pronged, which has allowed me to be fortunate enough to work at some brilliant clubs in my career. Chelsea being one of them, Birmingham City, Bristol Rovers now, and then working for the English FA for a number of years in the Welsh FA. So being able to experience goalkeeping right up from grassroots all the way to the top level. So I enjoy developing players, enjoy meeting new people, enjoy kind of the challenges that football brings. And obviously, at the end of the day, working in football is something that a lot of people want to do, but it takes a lot of hard graft. And that is definitely something that I instill on the players I work with and the coaches as well.
Yeah, and you're a serial author, and you're nearly up to 10 books now. I can imagine there's been a bit of hard graft involved in that process.
Sure, yeah. And I wrote my first book 10 years ago around the scientific approaches to goalkeepers. That was kind of looking at like the biomechanics behind goalkeeping, different coaching methodology, the physical side, get loads of case studies, looking at kind of goalkeeping syllabuses, like literally the whole thing really, the position from a holistic point of view, because there wasn't really anything out there that kind of hit what I wanted, and kind of didn't really show the coaching community and young players like a really broad aspect to goalkeeping. So that was the first book 10 years ago, and it's just, spiraled from there. So it's like I've done a few drill books. I've done a second edition, on the first book. I've done my own game-based methodology. I've done looking to develop like the basics foundation of goalkeeping, then around age-specific development as well. So encompassing 8 books, and I've just branched off into fiction as well. So this year we've written 2 fiction books around like a young female getting into football, because I've got, I've worked both in the male and female game in the last 15 years. So kind of, I wanted to see if I could write fiction. I wanted to see if I could it wasn't just one thing I knew about and I could write about. I wanted to see if I could transfer those skills, and luckily the feedback's been brilliant. So yeah, a serial author, the football equivalent to Shakespeare. It might say self-proclaimed or something like that. So but no, it adds a good kind of balance and blend to what I'm doing in my professional career at the minute.
I suppose what strikes me from the conversation so far is clearly you must be learning every day pretty much in your job, and obviously by writing.
Oh, for sure. You have to like the sport of football changes, the position of goalkeeping changes. You have to adapt, especially working with young players. The young generation are ever changing. Different fads, different crazes. They're very different to when I was a 15, 16-year-old kid, the players I'm working with these days. So you have to be aware of that, and you have to find ways to connect with them, which I think is a big kind of talking point in a moment, especially from my point of view within youth development, is that people always say the kids are different these days. They don't work as hard. They don't do this. They don't do that. But what they perceive maybe lack for in some areas, they make up for in other areas, like creativity, being able to be really confident about what they want. So where I'm at the minute, 35 years old, I feel I've got a lot more experience than my age, really, considering that I knew what I wanted to do from a young age and worked hard to do that. When wasn't necessarily the best at school, but probably the token. Had loads of ability, loads of potential, but maybe a bit lazy. But then I found as soon as I got into university, I kind of hit my level, which is a little bit weird because the higher level you'd expect it maybe to struggle, maybe expect it to be the other way around. But no, it's something that, I really instill in the players that I work with, on a daily basis today, is that nothing's given to you. You've got so many kids that want to be a professional footballer. You have got a graft, and you've got to be resilient, and you've got to show something different to kind of stand out from the crowd.
On that note, when you're talking about the younger players, goalkeeping in itself is brutal, really, in some respects, isn't it?
100%. And it's the position isn't for everyone, and I think that's what you try and get across is that the myth of you got to be crazy to be a goalie. It does ring true in some sense, because you're in the firing line. If you make a mistake, it's more often than not a goal. Only one of you can play. It's not like you can come on for 20 minutes as a goalie and make an impact. That's a big part of some of the challenges and the conversations I've had over the last kind of 4, 5, 6 years. It does take a different kind of personality to be able to deal with adversity, to bounce back. And, it's not saying that you can't develop some of these skills, but some personality traits lend themselves to playing in goal more than others. But it's definitely something that I've learned as I've come through my playing and coaching careers. I started playing in goal because I didn't want to run around. Because I was quite an overweight kid, a little bit lazy, and I didn't want to run around the pitch. So I just thought, I'll go in goal, don't have to run. And then you build from there, really, and then you realise that actually, it's more than that. Especially like nowadays, I'm sure we'll go into a bit more detail as we go through the interview and the podcast. But it takes a lot more than just standing in goal in this day and age.
Yeah, most definitely. And on that note, what would your definition of mental toughness be for goalkeepers?
I think it's for me, it's a big one. Is dealing with adversity. I think that's a real big one, because within goalkeeping, you're gonna make so many mistakes. You're gonna have tough times. You're gonna give the ball away. You're gonna let easy goals in. When you're younger, you're gonna let balls through your hands. You're gonna get beaten over your head. And I think it's just being able to understand that that's part of the position and being able to deal with it. You're going to make mistakes, and it's how you bounce back from that, and being able to work with coaches and people around you to develop strategies that you can kind of be in a really good, clear headspace. And then part of that as well is you're not going to maybe play all the time, especially as you get older. You have to work your way to get in the team. As I said earlier, you're not like you can be a striker on the bench, come on for the last 20 minutes and score a couple of goals to win the game. The goalkeeper doesn't have that luxury. So you have to be mentally tough to be sitting on the bench and wait your turn, but then earn your turn as well, which is something working at, the 16, 17, 18-year-olds at the minute. If they're looking to go on loan or looking to get in a team, you need to give them the tools that if they're not playing, they are tough enough to be able to deal with that. And as well, taking criticism too. People are always quick to point fingers at the goalie. Oh, we should have said that, should have done this. From people that probably don't understand the position and have never played in it. And that's a big thing for me, is that you don't have to have 100 England caps to coach goalies and to work with goalies. But in my own opinion, you've had to have played the position to understand it, because it's really unique. But to answer your question, mental toughness for me as a goalie is dealing with adversity and everything that encompasses.
Okay, so I've got three themes I've picked up on there. We'll dive into one to start with.
Yeah.
So first one, you mentioned a couple of times there that there's obviously only one goalkeeper.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say then, with regards to trying to motivate the goalkeepers who aren't playing on a regular basis, obviously that's going to be a tough job as a coach. Surely it must test your communication skills, I'd imagine.
Yeah, no, 100%. And it's something that I think you get better with experience and by learning on the job, really. And I think it's a case of, if you have a goalie that isn't playing, then they need to understand why they're not playing. And sometimes it might not be in their control. So, for example, the person that's playing might be playing out of their skin, and all you can do is challenge them. And all you can do is do the best of your ability that you can, so you can be in the best shape for when your opportunity does come. With a goalkeeper, it's usually an injury or a loss of form that gives you opportunity. So, you can't really affect what that number one is doing. You have to focus on yourself and be the best that you can be in training, and show, a brilliant mindset, a growth mindset, a resilient mindset to be able to then, when your chance comes, to grab it. Because I've been a part of conversations where goalkeepers banging on the manager's door or your door and saying, "Oh, look, I want to play. Like, I think I should be playing. I think I should be playing." And when their chance comes, they don't take it because they're too worried about everything else that's happening rather than getting their own house in order. But your communications have to be spot on. And, I think it's easy to understand when you've played the position and you know what it's like and you can empathise with them. But it's just making sure you give your number 2 or your number 3 as much attention as a number 1, because you never know what might happen. We've just said loss of form or injuries. Someone might be sold, someone might be unavailable, and people get the chances in various different ways. But no, your communication skills have got to be spot on. And also within that, you're listening. Obviously, that part of communication, but you've got to listen to them, and then you've got to come up with a way that you can work together the best way to then make sure that they're prepared, in all areas of the game that they can play. Obviously, at Rover, using my current club, Bristol Rovers, the manager and staff brought in a lone goalkeeper in January, and that goalkeeper is now playing, and the goalkeeper that was originally playing for the last kind of 18 months is now on the bench. So we pick up on that as an academy and think, right, okay, our young guys coming through, they have to be able to deal with that situation. They might not be able to deal with it as best as they can at the moment because they're still young. They're still, their brains, they're still developing. But when they do reach kind of mid-20s, 30s, they understand. They would have experienced some similar, more controlled situations when they're younger, to be able to give them the skills that they can cope when they're older.
A couple of things you mentioned there about the listening skills, the empathizing. I suppose I'm guessing as well, just really trying to make sure every goalkeeper feels valued is vitally important there. Do you treat them as a team, essentially? They're their own sort of mini team, and challenge them in different ways?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, yeah, you do, in terms of, in my career, I've done a lot of my own individual analysis. We have our own development plans. We have our own themes, which obviously now have to link in with the team practices a lot in terms of the way we want them to play, in terms of the training sessions. It's beneficial that they match up in terms of we're working on something that the outfield's working on, so that transfer is really easy. But no, you are kind of like a mini team, and you do have each other's back. The keepers union, is something that's thrown around, but it does ring true that you're all in it together. And the most thriving environments I've been in is where everyone supports each other. And sometimes there's a hierarchy, who's a number 1, and you're just doing your best to support them. Sometimes it's a bit right. The manager doesn't mind that competition, so you've got to, you're trying to effectively play for the shirt every week, which is what we do usually in our 18s program. And what I've done previously is that you can do it 2 ways, right? Each week, for a period of 6 weeks, you're going to be picked on how well you train and how well you do in the week, in terms of maybe not how you do on a match day, which might seem a bit counterproductive, but it's trying to breed that training mentality. So then that if you train well each week, you've got a chance of playing. So it's like a clean slate every week. Yeah. Flip side of that, we've done it where, right, this goalkeeper, right, you're going to play the next 4 games. So they know that they're trusted with the next 4 games. They can, they can think, right, I've got these 4 games to prepare for. I can kind of plan out my training. I can plan out my week, get my mindset right. And then the ones that the goalkeeper or goalkeepers that aren't playing know that their role is different over the next 4 weeks. So by doing that, you try and like give them all the tools to be able to deal with lots of situations as they get older. And there's no kind of like right or wrong way. There's kind of ways, maybe more appropriate ways at that moment in time. And, you know, you're dealing with different personalities as well within that, which is something as a coach, again, you've got to really take into account.
Yeah, I can see how that's like really helpful. I mean, you talked there about a training mentality, and despite you going to have the mini team, like really focusing in on yourself, yeah, it has to be so essential. Especially, it would be very easy to fall into the trap of that. What am I trying to say? Yeah, you mentioned about hierarchies, looking at the number one and like looking up to them, and as a result, it dents your own ego and your own confidence. Yeah, that must be a real challenge for some. I bet you've witnessed that.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen so many different situations in the past, and I've seen a situation previously where there was a group of 4 top goalies, you know, 2 really great young goalies, 2 established senior pros, and there was a brilliant mix. But then sometimes when people leave and that challenge is taken away, it becomes too easy. So in this situation, 3 of those goalkeepers left for one reason or another, and there was one goalkeeper that was left, but then they weren't being challenged on a daily basis because there was no one to take their place. So there was no one trying to push them from externally. So then they become too comfortable. So it's about finding the best way that works for like the department and the goalkeepers you've got at that moment in time. And it is trying to sell them that this is going to be beneficial for you in the long run. You might not see it straight away, but you have to, like, you know, without being cliche, trust the process and know that what we're doing as coaching staff is really going to help you develop that mental toughness and dealing with adversity as you get older. But it's just trying to plant the tools when they're younger. And, you know, the 15, 16-year-old brain is going everywhere. So for them emotionally to be able to deal with stuff like that, it is tough. And I think as a coach, you realise how to do that as you get older. And, you know, when you do go up the higher level, the coaching badges and whatnot, you do get taught stuff like that. But I still think there's a place for giving the young coaches that awareness straight away, that you can start drip feeding some of this information in, you know, when you're working with young kids as well.
Is it fair to say then at the younger ages, in comparison to the professional game, that the level of challenge will be higher at the professional game because the players will naturally be tougher mentally, and probably the level of support will be higher at the younger age group, again, because they potentially need it?
Yeah, because they need a lot more support. They're younger as well. And, you know, within academies, they have to play a certain amount of minutes. So obviously you can't have one goalie playing all the game and you know the other goalie travelling around the country on a bench. You know, you have to, you know, different clubs, different leagues have different rules where it's 50%, you have to play 50% of games. And a lot of academies do, if you have 2 goalies per age group, you play 50%, so you might play half each, which then has a knock-on effect in itself that they don't get used to playing the whole game. So they're not used to concentrating for the whole game physically. They're not used to doing it for, you know, the demands for the whole game, even 12, 13-year-olds. So there's loads of different things that happen in goalkeeping in the academies, you know, that kind of look to alleviate that kind of thing. But there's high support when you're younger because, you know, especially when you work in the foundation phase goalies, you know, 9s to 12s or some cases 9s to 11s in some clubs, they just love being in goal and they just love throwing themselves around and there's no fear. And then it's just trying them to keep that mindset as they get older, which is really tough. Because obviously so much comes into the game. The complexity, that's the one, heightens in terms of their tactical demands. The pitches get bigger, players get bigger, the shots get stronger. So it's just giving them support as they get older to hopefully develop a really well-rounded goalkeeper. And the best players I've worked with are well-rounded. You know, they might have some strengths in certain areas, but they're well-rounded in all areas of the game. There's no real obvious weakness. And that only comes from like a varied development pathway.
You mentioned fear there and a little bit earlier about, you know, dealing with adversity, dealing with mistakes. So if let's say I'm a young goalkeeper and I struggle in that aspect where I let my head drop, I end up dwelling on mistakes, you know, what would your advice be to them to be able to snap out of it, you know, instantly on the pitch?
Yeah, I think before that, you explain to them that it's part of the position. It will happen. It's not unusual for this to happen. What I've done before is, you know, it's done in a light-hearted way, but you show top professionals making mistakes. And it's right, they make the same mistakes as you. So you might have received the ball for centre half and tried to play longer, mishit it, and it's gone to the striker and scored. Right, you're a 10-year-old kid. Right, this is a senior international doing it. So you're making the same mistakes. It's the same game. So it's trying to then say to them that it is accepted. and it's part of the position. And then if someone's struggling with it, you have to like be there as a positive reinforcement. That's all you can do. And you need to let them experience that and expose them to that in training, so that when they play competitive matches, it's not alien to them. So ways you can do that in training is to increase the challenge level at different times, so they're out their comfort zone. So you might lay on a practice that is really hard in terms of the expectation of you might save 1 out of 5 shots here, but you have to learn that if you're going to conceding goals is part of being a goalkeeper. So you have to build that into your training. And then you're not going to do that all the time, because obviously looking at, morale and, their heads are going to drop if they're conceding goals every session. It's too hard. But then it's being able to dial up and dial down around, that change level in training and how you structure it. And so then when they do cross the white line on a Saturday or a Sunday, then if they do make a mistake in the game, then they've got, right, okay, I'm going to crack on. It happens. I'm going to, I can't let that affect my next action. That's a conversation we've had like in the past kind of few weeks at one of my clubs. At my club, is that not making multiple mistakes in a short period of time. So once you make a mistake, don't make 2, 3, 4 after that, because your game's just going to capitulate. So then it's making sure that, right, okay, I've made a mistake. I might have made a mistake leading to a goal, or I might have done something that's affected the team. Okay, this is a clean slate. You have to crack on, and there's no right or wrong way to do that. I've tried. You do things with like wristbands and sweatbands and have like trigger words to reset yourself, and there's loads of research around that. So it's just finding what works for that individual. When I was working in the girls' game, we had something where they had like superhero bands on. So like they would have one had Iron Man, one had the Hulk, one had Catwoman and Wonder Woman. So it was like, if you were feeling a bit down in the game, or you made a mistake, or you were feeling a bit anxious, you look at that and you think, yeah, no, that's me. Like that's where I'm going with that. So again, this, you'll probably know more than me, or ways around coping strategies around different aspects of the psychological side, but doing little things like that with the youngers and making it relatable to them and connecting with them in that way, I found is really valuable.
Yeah, as you say, it's going to pull them and shift that emotional state at the time.
Yeah.
But obviously, you touched on it. The key thing is developing their self-awareness, so they're aware of what it is they're experiencing and how they're behaving, and to be able to make the shift.
Yeah, for sure.
And the other point I really wanted to try and drill into is the dealing with criticism. Obviously, nobody enjoys it, but it is part and parcel of the game. And I would imagine social media has played its part as well, and to make it even more difficult.
Yeah. Well, of course, look, if you're a goalie and you've had a bad game, within 10 seconds it's on, or you've conceded a bad goal, it's on Twitter, there's memes around you, there's mistakes videos, there's this, that and the other. The stronger side of it is obviously offensive messages, and not within goalkeeping maybe specifically, but as a general footballer, in terms of the racist and homophobic abuse, people in clubs have got, just from that initial kind of that social media, everyone's got a platform. But it's like, I don't have the the experience of playing in front of 30,000-40,000 people and being booed, or making a mistake there. So that's where you tap into people that have done that, and more experienced individuals than yourself, to kind of look at how they cope with it as well, and trying to pick learnings from people that have experienced it themselves. But no, you're right. And even at a kind of youth level, all players have got accounts. You kind of put things on your Snapchat store and your Instagram store, and people comment and stuff like that. So it can be quite a minefield, as as you're probably aware at the moment. So especially within goalkeeping, you've seen it loads of, maybe not on social media, but newspapers. Goalkeepers like Rob Green, Joe Hart, Jordan Pickford, getting really slated in the papers about their performances. And it's easy said than done to say, oh, don't read it. But like it's tough, because if you're in the public eye, you're going to be exposed to it. So within those kind of aspects, it's those players individually would have been able to do their own coping strategies and things like that, and work with individuals and support staff around how, if they do see something like that, how to kind of get it out of their mind. But it's tough, and it's something that I can't empathise with, because I've never been in that position. So as as I said earlier, I've done a lot of picking people's brains that have been in that situation to how they would deal with it, and then trying to relay that information to the younger kids, so then they're self-aware of it, and how they can kind of deal with it themselves if they were ever put in that position or face that kind of criticism as well.
Yeah, well, one thing that's always struck me when I'm like working with a player, and they don't necessarily have to be a goalkeeper, they can be an athlete in another sport. Generally, when you're performing in a match, in a competitive situation, your levels of adrenaline, arousal, your emotions are going through the roof. Worst possible thing really to do at the end of a match is to put your phone on and start having a look on Instagram when your emotions are right up there.
Yeah.
And because I suppose the younger generation, or well, I'm saying the younger generation, the older generation now, we're addicted to mobiles. It is so tough, but it's, again, that's probably a skill in itself, just to throw the mobile away for a few hours.
Well, it is, yeah. A lot of clubs ban phones like a couple of hours before games. I haven't heard of anyone banning them after games, but you're right. As soon as the event happens, your emotions are high and you might react negatively, or you probably will react negatively. So, I think a lot of people have got in trouble. The main reason they get in trouble is probably because the kind of how soon they respond after something's happened. So rather than let it stew, cooling down and whatnot. And I think it's something that's coming into young footballers at the moment, is that they're having life skills classes, they're having talks about how to deal with this kind of thing. Obviously the LFE run a really good program around the country, not just at Rovers, but around at other clubs as well, around like kind of life skills, giving them the tools to be able to deal with like social media, how to act on it, how to deal with, that kind of side of sport. Because when you're doing a scholarship, you're learning how to be a professional footballer. And whether we like it or not, this is here to stay, this side of professional football. So if you've sent some dodgy or some X-rated tweets when you're 13, 14, the likelihood is if you make it big and you're 20, 21 as a pro, those will be fished out. So, it's once you writ something, it's kind of there in stone, isn't it? If people get on it. So that's a real big area in sport at the minute. And, something that I've, got a decent amount of knowledge about. I think there'll be a lot more research, I imagine, in the future around how social media affects sport. I can see that being like a big area of topic of conversation over the next, probably 5 years, for example.
Yeah, most definitely. We'll go back to your books before we wrap things up. So you mentioned in the last 6 months or the last year, you've written 2 books which are related more to the young female goalkeeper. Is that right?
Yeah.
Do you want to share some more information?
Yeah, so it's fiction book. So it's around, I've worked in girls and women's football for 10 years. I've seen, work with a lot of the girls that are in, the England senior England squads at the minute, not just goalkeepers, but outfield players, seen their journeys from when they were kind of 11, 12 years old, the foundations. And when I started working, well, it was at its infancy and what it is now. So when I was looking at doing fiction, it kind of really it matched up really well, because as people always say, write what you know about. And I knew about this, and I knew there was nothing around it in terms of fiction for young female footballers that were kind of wanted like a heroine to latch onto, and to look at some experiences that they might face in the future in a fiction setting. So it was something that really kind of all fell into place, really. And then I was able to kind of create the backstories and everything and write about football really easy. So it was something that, as I said earlier, I've always wanted to do. And it was just about what to do, what to write about. And this kind of, really stood out to me. And I've, the first 2 books are done. There's ideas for a lot more. It's kind of, it tracks her through different ages. So she starts out at age 11. By the end of the second book, she's 13, and she goes through, overcoming the barriers that a young female footballer would face. Probably the book starts in 2013. So what they would face in that time period, around the opportunity, around the stigma behind women's and girls football, behind playing with the boys, behind clubs and professional clubs just women's clubs starting to be professional. So it kind of it's like a retrospective look upon like a young girl's journey leading up to the modern day. So received really good feedback so far from a lot of the people that have read it around the age that I'm targeting. And now the next stage for me is to publicize it more, to build a really big audience, which is something I'm working on at the minute. Obviously having a kid 3 months ago hasn't really helped, because you got a lot more that you kind of derailed from it a little bit. But yeah, it kind of, even though it's not goalkeeping and it's not, football per se, it is football and it is around football. So everything I've done has kind of helped create the book, if that makes sense, and given a real realistic look and, first-hand a look on kind of what this young girl would experience in football. At the same time, creating loads of cool characters and cool settings and stuff like that.
It sounds fantastic. So what age group is it actually targeted for?
So it's targeted for around kind of 7 to 13-year-olds, so kind of that just young adult, top end children, kind of middle grade kind of age group. And I've done people that have read it that are a bit older as well. So it's kind of, it hits the age group that the young girl is going to be at within this. So kind of probably 9 to kind of 15, something like that. So yes, it's kind of got a good broad audience. And like any fiction book, you target a certain audience and it ends up being something else. Like look at Harry Potter, it was targeted for 9 to 12s, and the whole world reads it now. So not that I'm comparing mine to that. It's nowhere near kind of that level of sophisticated writing or kind of everything behind it. But no, yeah, it's been brilliant to do. So hopefully I can do some more and, get them all going in the future and, build up a good following of it.
Yeah. Watch this space then on the Harry Potter theme then.
So yeah, to get a movie deal and all that and, get a good
Exactly.
series or something. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
So based around our conversation, not so much the last part there, if you were summarising certainly for young goalkeepers and coaches who are coaching young up-and-coming goalkeepers, what would the 3 key takeaways be?
I think it would be to coach the position as a whole. So not just focus on the techniques, focus on everything. So focus on the psych side, the biomechanics, the movement side, the tactical side, really bring everything together. So then when you're working with your goalies, they get a really good experience of everything the position holds. And as they get older, they're going to be in a real good place to kind of develop all aspects of their game. I think the second one, you have to make it enjoyable and you have to make them fall in love with the position, because then as they do go through the pathways, if they love the position, then they will take on the so-called negative areas of it a little bit easier. So, for example, if they love the position, but they're struggling with something, they've still got the buy-in and they still want to work on it because they love what they do. So I think that's something I've learned, a lot over my career. And I think as well is keep it close to the game. So look at the game as a whole and what the game looks like, and then look at the goalie's role within it, and then match what everything you do around it. So then you're not doing things for no reason. You're not going off on a tangent. Everything you do around your training is helping them to be a better goalkeeper. And I think there's so many ways you can do that. Hopefully my books shed a light on some of that maybe aren't in your traditional coaching courses, maybe a little bit, I don't want to, again, be cliche, outside the box, a little bit, maybe, innovative. A lot of the stuff that I was talking about in my first book 10 years ago, which wasn't common practice in goalkeeping, is common practice now. And that kind of justifies in my own mind that maybe I was onto something. That's definitely been proven over, the last few years, where you see online, you see videos, you see people contacting you, you see different coaching courses, other people working. And actually what I was trying to develop for young goalies that 10 years ago has now helped the ones that, not just that I work with, but others I work with, because a lot of the things I was saying around developing young goalies, or back kind of a number of years ago, I tried out there. I worked with them, and then a lot of the players I've worked with are now playing at a really good level, so professional level, youth international level. So hopefully within my books they'll be able to really help all young goalies out there, whether they're 7, 9, 10, 11, male, female, whatever. There's something for everyone in the books. So I like to think that I've kind of tried to attack the position from all areas, really, and to help grow the love and the recognition of the position, really, and the profile of the position, and make it fashionable to be a goalie now.
Certainly, when it comes to the books there and like your details, we'll make sure there's some information in the show notes for the listeners there if they want to purchase and have a good read. So as I can see, there's some fantastic information. I want to search for one last takeaway, and this is on the goalkeeper who perhaps has had a bit of a rough trot. They're young coming through. They've had different trials, and I suppose they're seeking a breakthrough, if you like. What would your advice be?
I think it's try and take every opportunity you can. So whether that be going for the trials, whether that be trialing for different teams, whether that be getting in loads of extra practice. I think now as well, like having like a social media platform as well, posting yourself doing videos, posting yourself doing training, writing blogs about yourself, trying to increase your exposure as a goalie really helps. So kind of you're creating that own kind of your unique attributes as a goalkeeper, and your own persona. And it's just working as hard as you can on all aspects of your game and really seeking feedback. So if you are unsuccessful at trials at whatever level, seeking feedback as to why you haven't been successful, and then pinpointing using those areas to pinpoint how you're going to work on it. So for example, if maybe you're struggling with the distribution side, then it might be, okay, I need to go and join in outfield training for a bit. I need to go down the park with my mates or my dad or my mum and keep kicking loads of footballs just to work on my technique, work on both feet. So I think for me, it's seeking feedback as to why maybe you're not being successful, and then having like that end goal. So it's right, this is, well, I want to be in a professional academy, and then drawing out steps of how to do that. And the ways I've just said, will really help that. And it's, it's tough because a lot of young players want to be a professional goalie. They want to play for an academy, but there's only a certain amount of, places, as you know. But everyone has their own path. And that would be my main takeaway message, is that everyone develops at different rates. Everyone has a different pathway. just because you're in an academy at 11 years old playing for Chelsea, Liverpool, Man City, it doesn't mean you're going to be doing that when you're 18. Flip side of that, you might be 13, 14, and you might be playing grassroots with aspirations of playing at academy and professional level. Just because you haven't got there at 13, 14, it doesn't matter. Everyone develops it their own way. So, there's a bit of a long-winded answer to that question, but I think that would be the main crux, is that everyone's got their own pathway. Everyone's got their own way of doing things, their own development that's set out for them. Just maximising your own potential and doing all you can to be the best you can be.
I think one of the key things that I pick from it as well is taking responsibility. You say about asking the question to why you have been released or why you haven't been taken on, and then actually doing something about it. That's one of the key things for me there.
Oh, massively, and we it's called in the football, like it's called doing extras or going the extra mile, or usually the ones that are out on the training pitch first, come in last. The ones that seek feedback from coaches around, right, can I watch my clips of you? Can you send me some videos? Can you give me a physical plan? The people that actively seek all these kind of things rather than just let it come to them, the ones that actively seek it are the ones that usually have success, especially nowadays where the pool is so big around players. Those little edges really set you apart from another player. So that's really key message.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I've loved this conversation, Andy. Really appreciate your time. Do you want to just share with the listeners your information and where they can reach out to you should they want to have a chat with you?
Yeah, so around around the goalkeeping side of things, you can search my books on Amazon.co.uk, and it's also in Waterstones, any good bookstore online. And around my website, it's www.andyelleray.com. So it's just around some of the stuff I've done and how to get in contact, a bit more about the books, a bit more about me, what I've done of research kind of thing in the past. And then around the fiction side of it, Lily's Goals. So you can again search for it on the book. Search it on the book website, Amazon, Waterstones, W. Smith, Book Depository. I'm also on Twitter, Andy Elleray, and on Instagram as well. So I don't post as much as probably I should do to kind of keep myself out there a little bit. But obviously with the baby, it's been tough. But I do like to share stuff. I'm always open for questions. I love getting feedback around any book and being personable and being able to speak to people one-on-one around stuff. So that's all my details. I'm an open door, so anyone can contact me on any domain, any platform. It'd be great to chat anything about goalkeeping or football in general.
Brilliant. Well, again, big thank you.
Brilliant.
As I mentioned in the introduction, I've got a particular interest in goalkeeping. So this episode was gold dust for me personally, and I really hope you guys, the listener, have enjoyed it too. And, my interest in goalkeeping goes back to my childhood, where both my dad and uncle were both goalkeepers. My uncle went on to play professionally, and around about 5 to 6 years ago, I decided that I'd really look at this area in a lot of detail. I had a good look around, and I thought there's no real experts, if you like, in the field of goalkeeping psychology. So at that time, I decided, right, I'm going to make myself an expert. I'm going to write a book. So I did a whole host of research for about 18 months where I chatted to a number of really high-level professional goalkeepers and goalkeeping coaches. Unfortunately, the book didn't get written. So I've got all this research, I've got a whole series of interviews, and I've got a number of notes, to say the least, to draw back on. But family pressures, time pressures, financial pressures all sort of went against me at that time. But I don't know, it's still in the back of my mind to potentially come back to. Anyway, moving on. In terms of this episode, I really did enjoy that conversation with Andy. And I hope, as I say, that you did find it helpful. I hope it's maybe helped you see things from a different perspective and challenged your thinking. That's the whole point of this. And I want to go on and challenge your thinking if you are a goalkeeper or a goalkeeping coach too now as well. Could you just think about the top 3 mental barriers that you put up either in training or in matches, and get a pen and paper out and write those 3 barriers down? And then with that pen and paper, why don't you just write down some of the solutions? What resources you can draw upon in order to break down some of these barriers? And by breaking those barriers, what would it actually look like? What difference would it make to your goalkeeping and to your life if you did overcome them? Some food for thought, I hope. Please do give it a bash. And until next time, when I've got another fantastic guest on, enjoy your week. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sports psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.